This is the voice of Radio Free Neruda.
We wake up every morning and we go to bed every night thinking and worrying about the health and well-being of our kids. I know I do that with my kids, and I do it with every kid in this country.
How's tree clearance?
Lumbering.
Why so slow?
We're stumped. The cheese won't cut.
What?
They said it was sharp.
We've seen more sins from a jar of pickled herring.
Is that a sawfish?
Have you no bit?
We baited the cheese, but the fish aren't biting.
We're not asking twice.
Camp policy, sir. Don't axe, don't fell. That's some report.
Long time, going back. How far you want to go back? Bob Dylan laid it out there, and Woody Guthrie laid it out there. It's like, well, there's your bar to get over. Leonard Cohen certainly pointed the way, and Tom Waits. I mean, songwriters have been showing us how to do it a long time, and it's craft.
Greetings. We apologize for the following and entreat any and all to forward our message. David Randall Curtis. It has been some 6 months since your surgery to correct your folly. Herr Doctor assures us it time sufficient for recovery and return to duty. Where are you? We understand you're taking umbrage at our declaration that you are but censorious, shirking, poser, blackguard, brain-damaged, black-tar junkie piece of shit. Yet not all is clear, and thus we ask, is it because we stated the obvious and undeniable, or that we finally reiterate it without the fig leaf of humor? It does not matter. Report to the revolution. Return to our embrace. But make no mistake, David Randall Curtis, you are unloved. You remain unforgiven. Take what cold comfort you may. You are wanted, and your presence is required. The audience demands it. Heil Neruda.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, this weekend I traveled to Afghanistan to thank our men and women in uniform and our deployed civilians on behalf of a grateful nation for the extraordinary sacrifices they make on behalf of our security. I was also able to meet with our commanding general and ambassador to review the progress that we've made. And today I'd like to update the American people on the way forward in Afghanistan and how this year we will bring America's longest war to a responsible end. The United States did not seek this fight. We went into Afghanistan out of necessity after our nation was attacked by al-Qaeda on September 11th, 2001. We went to war against al-Qaeda and its extremist allies with the strong support of the American people and their representatives in Congress, with the international community and our NATO allies, and with the Afghan people, who welcomed the opportunity of a life free from the dark tyranny of extremism. We have now been in Afghanistan longer than many Americans expected. But make no mistake, thanks to the skill and sacrifice of our troops, diplomats, and intelligence professionals, we have struck significant blows against al-Qaeda's leadership. We have eliminated Osama bin Laden, and we've prevented Afghanistan from being used to launch attacks against our homeland. We've also supported the Afghan people as they continue the hard work of building a democracy. We've extended more opportunities to their people, including women and girls, and we've helped train and equip their own security forces. Now we're finishing the job we started. Over the last several years, we've worked to transition security responsibilities to the Afghans. 1 year ago, Afghan forces assumed the lead for combat operations. Since then, they've continued to grow in size and in strength while making huge sacrifices for their country. This transition has allowed us to steadily draw down our own forces from a peak of 100,000 U.S. troops to roughly 32,000 today. 2014, therefore, is a pivotal year. Together with our allies and the Afghan government, we have agreed that this is the year we will conclude our combat mission in Afghanistan. This is also a year of political transition in Afghanistan. Earlier this spring, Afghans turned out in the millions to vote in the first round of their presidential election, defying threats in order to determine their own destiny. And in just over 2 weeks, they will vote for their next president. And Afghanistan will see its first democratic transfer of power in history. In the context of this progress, having consulted with Congress and my national security team, I've determined the nature of the commitment that America is prepared to make beyond 2014. Our objectives are clear: disrupting threats posed by al-Qaeda, supporting Afghan security forces, and giving the Afghan people the opportunity to succeed as they stand on their own. Here's how we'll pursue those objectives. First, America's combat mission will be over by the end of this year. Starting next year, Afghans will be fully responsible for securing their country. American personnel will be in an advisory role. We will no longer patrol Afghan cities or towns, mountains or valleys. That is a task for the Afghan people. Second, I've made it clear that we're open to cooperating with Afghans on two narrow missions after 2014: training Afghan forces and supporting counterterrorism operations against the remnants of al-Qaeda. Today I want to be clear about how the United States is prepared to advance those missions. At the beginning of 2015, we will have approximately 98,000 U.S. Let me start that over. 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 Let me start that over.
You, man at the machine and man in the workshop, if they order you tomorrow to stop making water pipes and cook pots and start making helmets and machine guns, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, girl behind the counter and girl at the office, if they order you tomorrow to fill hand grenades and mount scopes on sniper rifles, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, factory owner, if they order you tomorrow to sell gunpowder instead of talcum powder and cocoa, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, researcher in the laboratory, if they order you tomorrow to invent a new death to do away with old life, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, poet in your room, if they order you tomorrow not to sing love songs but songs of hate, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, doctor at the sick bed, if they order you tomorrow to certify men as fit for war, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, minister in the pulpit, if they order you tomorrow to bless murder and praise war as holy, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, captain on the steamer, if they order you tomorrow not to transport wheat but cannons and tanks, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, pilot at the airfield, if they order you tomorrow to carry bombs and incendiaries over cities, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, tailor at your table, if they order you tomorrow to start sewing uniforms, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, judge in your robe, if they order you tomorrow to report to the military court, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, man at the train station, If tomorrow they order you to give the signal for the ammunition and the troop trains to depart, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, man in the village and man in the city, if they come for you tomorrow and with your induction papers, then there's only one thing to do. Say, no! You, mother in Normandy and mother in the Ukraine, you, mother in Frisco and London, you on the banks of the Wangho and the Mississippi, you, mother in Nepal and Hamburg and Cairo and Oslo, mother in all regions of earth, mothers all over the world, if they order you tomorrow to bear children, nurses for military hospitals and new soldiers for new battles, mothers all over the world, then there's only one thing to do. Say no! Mothers, say no! Because if you don't say no, if you don't say no, mothers, then in the noisy port cities, hazy with the steam, the large groaning ships will grow silent, and like Titanic mammoth corpses filled with water, they will lethargically totter against the lifeless, lonely algae, seaweed, and shell-covered walls of the docks. The body that previously appeared so gleaming and threatening, now reeking like a foul fish cemetery, rotten, sickly, and dead. The street cars will be senselessly bent and dented like dull, glass-eyed bird cages, and lie like petals beside the confused steel skeletons of the wires and tracks, behind rotten sheds with holes in their roofs and lost crater-strewn streets. A mud-gray, heavy, leaden silence will roll in, voracious and growing in size, will establish itself in the schools and universities and theaters, on sports fields and children's playgrounds, horrible and greedy and unstoppable. The sunny, juicy grapes will spoil on the neglected slopes. The rice will dry up in the desolate earth. The potatoes will freeze in the plowed fields, and the cows will stretch their dead, rigid legs into the sky like upturned milking stools. In the institutions, the ingenious inventions of the great physicians will become sour, rot, mold into fungus. The last sacks of flour, the last jars of strawberries, the pumpkins, and the cherry juice will spoil in the kitchens, chambers, and cellars, in the cold storage lockers and storage areas. The bread under the upturned tables and on splintered plates will become green, and the melted butter will smell like soft soap. The grain on the fields will have bent down to the earth alongside rusty plows like a defeated army, and the smoking brick chimneys, the food and smokestacks of the stamping factories, covered by eternal grass, will crumble, crumble, crumble. Then the last human being, clueless with slashed intestines and polluted lungs, will wander alone under the poisonous glowing sun and vacillating constellations. Wander lonely among immense mass graves and cold idols of the gigantic concrete block deserted cities. The last human being, scrawny, mad, blasphemous, complaining, and his terrible complaint. Why? Will trickle away unheard into the steppe, waft through the burst ruins, and die out in the rubble of churches, slap against impenetrable bunkers, fall into pools of blood, unheard, answerless. The last animal-like cry of the last animal human being. All of this will come about tomorrow. Tomorrow, perhaps. Perhaps already tonight. If you don't say no!
Proceeding was brought to you by the makers at Golematic. Bright lies for dark truths.